Welcome back, Panther fans. I'm David Brown here with Ryan Graham,
Hey, y'all.
Tim Thurber,
Hello.
and this is State of Atlanta. Ooh,
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 gusher right there.
you got a little
Hey.
on your face.
A little
We are
excited by your can.
also joined by Ben Moore.
What's up, boys? How we doing?
Hey, man.
Doing
Not
very
bad.
well, man. It's been a long time. Thanks for hopping on. We've been wanting to get you back on here time too, but it seemed like to talk recruiting stuff. But it seems like every week there's just something else coming. I'm like, I wanted to get you in here. We can get it all round up. We may have to get you 2 or 3 times this offseason to go through all this kind of stuff. It's been pretty busy at the park, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been wild, man, and always great to jump on, and it has been too long, but we have certainly plenty to talk about. It is a little bit different in philosophies as we know with Dell McGee's philosophy on recruiting versus Sean Elliott's. As we've seen, we've talked about that a little bit, and in the Twitter sphere and the message board sphere, and there was a lot less lake time for Dell McGee. I'll say that. I do know. I don't believe he's taking a vacation, from what I can tell. He's basically just rocking and rolling. The dead period is now underway for Fourth of July holiday, and then a little bit further into July. But the month of June has been awesome for the staff, man. It's just up to 10 verbal commits right now, and some of them are highly ranked. Some of them will be ranked shortly once our friends in the national 24/7 offices take a look at film and different things like that. So it's been good, and I think there is certainly a sea change with folks around the Southeast and how they view Georgia State football, which is a great thing for all the Georgia State fans for sure.
So,
Yeah. So
I actually did
Brian.
want to ask you something just to kind of level set because, I was involved in recruiting and there were very defined recruiting periods. And they were few and far between kind of. And now it seems like there's a lot more, and that we also have like the portal periods, and we have all these new things. Can you level set us and
Yeah.
just like what are these periods? Like where is recruiting happening now?
When do they stop?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. So basically, right now we're in a dead period. So basically, kids can't come on campus to take official visits or unofficial visits or meet with staff, and also the staff can't go to their schools. Part of this, as well, is you want to give. It's twofold, right? From the high schooler kids, they're out of school right now. They want to be able to do off-season workouts. They want to actually, maybe take a vacation with their family, just get some off time potentially in this, air quotes here, off season. The coaches do too. Like from basically August until January, it's a 60-hour-a-week job, maybe more, maybe closer to 80, to be candid.
Well,
And
for this staff,
that includes recruiting, that includes game prep, that includes everything. So I think that they more wanted to define the eval period when you kind of get into spring practice. And it's a little bit different because high school spring practice, for the most part, is really the last few weeks of actual high school. So you have kind of like the college spring practice that takes place normally in March and April, or if your coach leaves, then you kind of have to postpone that a little bit. But when you have high school that typically is in the month of May, and then of course kids graduate in June, and then you've got a whole barrel of 7-on-7s and different summer workouts and things like that that go on in June and into July. But the high school calendars. And that's still kind of the primary focus if you talk to most folks around the country. The biggest thing ultimately is, as we know, the college calendar doesn't always match the high school calendar. It gets out a little earlier. So, when coaches leave, it automatically swings open the transfer door for that specific program for basically 30 days. We're seeing that. I think it made it to our message boards. Baseball, the Campbell baseball team literally lost their entire team. Like 30 guys jumped in the portal basically because their coach left. That happens. So in football, necessarily, you have that window right after the season. And basically they've pushed up the signing period now. It's earlier in December. It's not the third Wednesday in December anymore, which used to be years ago, probably when you were covering recruiting for us. It was that third Wednesday, and it pretty much was JUCO guys and maybe a couple early entrant high school guys, right?
Yeah.
Now it's Katie bar the door. That's the JUCO plus the high school early enrollees plus transfers. Because hey, I'm not going to play in a bowl game, or my assistant coach left, or maybe my head coach left, or is leaving for XYZ school. So they do have those defined windows, and all that is basically from a transfer point of view is you just have to enter your name in the portal. So when you're in the portal, you can be contacted by anybody, unless you put like a designation of, hey, don't contact me, and which pretty much means I know exactly where I'm going. That is very rare. But there's still a lot of kids in the portal for football. Still a lot of kids in the portal for basketball that may not find a home, and baseball, as we've seen with baseball season pretty much just wrapping up. So it's a tough deal because they are all trying to find a home, obviously by August, which is what, 6 weeks away. So it's on its way, big time.
It sounds like a really
What are
weird
these-
dating app that you're describing.
100%, man. It's 100%. And listen, it's burning coaches out. I mean, it really is. It's I think a lot of the old school coaches are not enjoying this at all, because they're just and now with the NCAA coming out basically and saying, hey, by the way, pretty much everybody and anybody is eligible immediately as long as you take care of your school stuff. And I had a conversation with kind of an old school academic guy this morning, and basically he said, listen, how do these kids, if they don't make it or get stuck in the portal, are they ever going to get a degree? They basically, some of these kids have walked away from free money with the hope of, hey, maybe I can go play somewhere else. And I think there's really three buckets ultimately. And I've told this folks across the board. I'm able to talk to high school kids and high school parents, high school coaches. And this is my message. There's basically three buckets of transfers. You have kids that leave because they want to go, get more playing time. You got kids that leave because a coaching shift or coaching change happens. And there are kids that are roster managed out, saying, hey, you don't have a home here. And the dirty little secret in recruiting, especially in the transfer portal age, is scholarships are renewed every July 1st when the academic calendar goes up, and not everybody has a home. And it obviously is accelerated with coaching changes and things like that. And look, Dell McGee here in Atlanta had uncomfortable conversations telling some of these kids, you don't have a spot. You don't have a scholarship July 1. So there's still, I believe, if my math is correct, probably one or two spots open for the 2024 roster, but the roster is pretty much set at this point.
You want to tell us a little bit about the roster and what you think we're going to see going into the fall?
Yeah, so Phil Steele, who's known as pretty much the godfather of all preview magazines, just dropped his out there, and I read the online version. Highly recommend going up and scooping one of those. It is like it's like an old J.C. Penney catalog for those folks who are old like me and remember those coming in and you picking out your Christmas presents. But yeah, it's a big document. I've read it up and down. I'm not saying Dell McGee may be fibbing a little bit, but I noticed a significant bunch of his projected starters of guys that were not on the roster during spring practice. So that's interesting. I think there's some guys that arrived basically in that transfer portal window and showed up in June once summer workouts and summer one started, that will be starters on this team. I couldn't even give you a full two deep. I've challenged Chris Hilliard and Brady Weiler both to try to come up with a two deep just to have something to talk about. And I'm sure we will laugh because we're going to be horrendously wrong. Just because you have a new head coach, you have a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. You have, as we talked a little bit off air, significantly bigger guys on the offensive and defensive lines. You're gonna have some semblance of an idea on what kind of scheme and style this team's gonna run. But as far as personnel goes, it's just bigger, faster, a lot different than certainly what this roster has seen before. And we're going to give it our hardest swing here in the next couple weeks. I've challenged those guys basically before we get to the middle of July to really come up with a projected depth chart, and are fully prepared to be completely wrong. It's going to be awesome.
So, one more question. Sorry.
Okay.
We all know the QB is the key to the whole entire season.
100%.
What are you seeing there?
Thanks for taking my
So
question.
you wanted to start with the most important position. All right, sounds good, Tim.
Yes.
All right, I guess you'll pull my leg.
It's
Yeah, no, I
killed
mean,
us in years past. I mean, come
yeah,
on.
of course. I think I tend to lean, especially coaches tend to lean with the experience. Zach Gibson going through spring practice. Again, the practices are closed, but we're not going to know what happened during the week. I tell people all the time, the spring game is just like an appetizer, man. Like, you're not running full sets, you're not running full, everything that you would in like game prep situation. Also, by the way, the defense for 15 practices has basically seen your scheme. They know exactly what plays you're calling when guys line up and things like that. So, kind of harshly judging how guys, throw the ball. There's a lot of variables there. I like Zach Gibson at this point to probably be the starter. I do a terrible job of pronouncing Christian's last name. He is from Canada. God bless him and his family. I'm not going to butcher his name on this podcast or elsewhere. I'll just say Christian V, the backup QB who came from Pitt. So yeah, I think he, certainly will push, and that's the overwhelming message that we got when we, Brady and I got down and saw Dell's press conference and have talked to some folks inside the program. Ultimately, is every position has competition. So they wanted to bring in obviously an additional arm there to kind of push Zach Gibson a little bit, and Braylon Ragland came in there too. I think Braylon being here in spring helps him. But again, you just don't know exactly what Jim Chaney's offense is going to look like 100%. And I think it's wild too, because somebody asked me, they're like, yeah, were you the last time he was in OC and you guys saw him, it was Tennessee? And I said, yeah, his quarterback also got fumbled and threw 2 interceptions. That impacted that game tremendously. We know, we were there. So it's interesting. I think it's, for anybody with swinging judgments of any member of the staff, I would probably just say, hey, it's kind of been a while since 2019. Like, let's be candid about that too. I went back and started looking at some of the film in the last few games of Georgia Tech last year when Kevin Shearer was running the defense, and it was improved. The talent on that roster was a little rough, and I think there's some guys that probably were in not the best position. One of the guys who probably is going to start defensive back week 1 against Tech is a former Georgia Tech defensive back in Kenyatta Watson Jr., who was not exactly thrilled that he wasn't playing on a very bad Georgia Tech defense. He was sitting on the sidelines, even though his dad was an assistant coach on the staff. And, oh, by the way, his dad's not an assistant coach there anymore. He's at Auburn. So there's a lot of storylines, obviously, in week 1. But yeah, I think the talent on this roster is certainly significantly improved. It's now how all these guys come together, and that includes the quarterback and wide receiver. But from what I understand, workouts are going really well. All the quarterbacks and wide receivers are coming together. We're getting workouts in, doing 7-on-7, throwing after workouts and things like that. They're trying to develop some chemistry, and I keep hearing over and over again, look out for P.D. Tucker, the Valdosta State transfer. He's a kid who is about 6'3.5", 6'4", from outside Savannah. Just physically impressive kid. And again, that I said it all fair. Dell McGee has a type. His staff has a type. You're going to see significant size, with him and Josiah Creedle. Talik Williams coming back and pulling his name out of the portal is a huge thing as well. He just happens to be from the same area as Dell McGee is. They know a lot of the same folks, and that was a huge pickup as well, because Dell wants to run fast and be speedy at every position, and Talik certainly can run pretty fast. And we saw what Kadarius Thompson did in the bowl game too. I think he took a big step forward there in Boise, proving that he can play at this level as well. And I mean, CT is 6'2", 6'3", so you're going to see size across the board that most teams in the Sun Belt don't really have. And I think, again, there's so many unknowns. I mean, I couldn't tell you the starting offensive lineman today. Couldn't tell you the starting defensive lineman today. I don't know. There's just going to be so much competition.
So, question, you kind of led into this question, but so for those that pay attention to stuff like this,
Yeah,
when we have that first game of the season, what will fans see as a difference in the type of guys that have been recruited under Coach McGee versus those who are coached under Sean? What kind of different approach is he taking to the type of guy that he looks for? Is it speed? Is it size? Is it what will look different about Georgia State this season from last and previous years?
Yeah, I think it's just size. I mean, Sean, like even on the offensive line, we know Sean was going to run the ball 65% of the time. He wanted smaller, quicker offensive linemen, and then conversely on the defensive line, wanted kind of smaller guys where they could kind of bust up angles and really let the linebackers got to run free. Dell and his staff, man, they want size. They want 300 pounders up front. They want massive. One of the one of the more impressive physical specimens that was brought in, guys signed with Penn State. Malik McNeil was another guy, came from the junior college ranks, 6'5", 330. Like these are, we in the past, Georgia State, we had, a Michael Ivory, right? You had one guy basically who was that kind of size, or maybe Travis Glover, right? Who played tackle, then went guard, and then tackle again. You're going to have all 5 linemen that look like Travis Glover. Like these are, big, huge. It's more of going to be a pro style. Not to say the quarterbacks cannot run. They do have some athleticism. They're not going to be Darren Granger. That's not the offense anymore. You're going to want to get the ball out. And some, one of the rooms that I'm super comfortable as well is the running back room. We saw what Freddie Brock did in the, in the bowl game. And I would honestly say he's probably third string right now, maybe.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I know basically
Blows
Dell
my
came
mind.
out and talked to Phil Steele, and he likes C.J. Beasley, certainly when the Coastal Carolina transfer, what he did in the spring. Again, it just goes back to experience. C.J. Beasley's played a ton of football in the Sun Belt, and he's a speedy dude. Can run inside, can run outside. We saw that. He can jump over a certain team from Statesboro and get a game-winning touchdown, which we are always for around here. So yeah, we're big fans. But no, I just think the size, I think the speed, length of guys as well. I think guys like Isaiah Guy had a really good spring. He's been mentioned across the board. And the funny part about it, we were talking a little bit about transfers. Dell was very hesitant, and I've seen it across the Sun Belt, and talking to kind of we've got a little group chat with the 24/7 publishers across the Sun Belt. Sun Belt coaches are very, very nervous about giving public praise to specific players because that puts a target on those players and saying, "Hey, come get them." We need to look at their film. We need to have maybe reach out to their high school coach or their 7-on-7 coach, or maybe a family member, or air quotes, not a family member, and see if we can't get them to lean over and jump in the portal. So we've seen it before. I will say this about the portal overall. I know Sean Elliott hated it. I mean, just simply detested it. I know that for a fact. I think Dell and this staff understand it. Also, I've talked to some folks who understand coming in. I think there was different layers of this recruiting class as well, to talk about the nature of the player. Listen, if you're coming to Georgia State and you ball out, I mean, you're playing 2 Power 5 opponents. You go and ball out against Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt, and you put good film together for 12, 13 games. You may have an opportunity to go get paid somewhere else. That's a real thing. That happened with Jamari Thrash. It's happened with Braquise Brown, who's going to be playing at Boston College, who may have an opportunity to start. Montavious Cunningham is probably going to be starting right tackle for Virginia Tech this year. I mean, you go up and down the list. Marcus Carroll. Marcus Carroll may push himself into a second day draft pick basically by balling out this year at Missouri. So I don't bemoan any of that, and Dell's not shying away from it either. He understands it. He's saying, listen, we're a Sunbelt program. We're not going to be able to throw $250,000 into a kid's lap and say, hey, no, you should stay here. So until folks, kind of understand that, come to grips with it, that it's not college football 10, 15, 20 years ago, that's okay. And it starts with the head coach, man. He embraces it. He understands it because he understands the same side that these Power 4 kids also are looking at it and saying, hey, I'm 4th on the depth chart, but I can go to Georgia State and I can start and ball out. So, and have an opportunity to go play in the league.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying for a little while now. Is like you get like Sean, who kind of complains about the portal, but the teams that are going to dominate in the G5 are going to be the ones that figure out how to deal with the portal. They're going to find out the innovative ways to get kids in and out and figure out the portal. They're going to have it's such a important change to the game that the teams that figure it out are going to be the winners of wherever they're at. Like
there's no question.
It's a game changer.
Completely. And the older
Yeah.
coaches hated it. I mean, they just did. The older school coaches. I mean, and again, I don't begrudge Sean. Listen, he's been coaching, college football for 20 some years. He came up in a one. Hey, kids stayed for 4 or 5 years and worked hard and sat on the depth chart and continued to work hard and maybe would play as a junior and then as a senior. Kids don't want to wait that long, and they look around and say, all right, well, if there's a kid that is better than me that they're recruiting, or and the other side too, there's going to be constant competition. I mean, Dell's going to want to out recruit what the 24 class look like. We've already seen that with the 25 class, right? You have guys, and we're seeing it already, unfortunately, is you lose some of these guys because bigger programs come running. Ant Richardson from Greenville is a perfect example. He committed, he decommitted, this weekend and went to South Florida. I don't believe he signs with South Florida in December. I truly don't. I've talked to people basically. Mississippi State's coming on hard. Other SEC programs are watching him as well. He's an elite athlete and can play wide receiver or corner. So that's the other side as well. We're going to see exactly what people think of Dell McGee and his staff's ability to evaluate talent. We saw a lot of misses with Sean and his staff. We saw guys that never, ever played or never played significant minutes. Guys, and I know it's a hard gauge because a lot of this stuff is self-reported, right? But you're looking at the kids that Dell's recruiting in terms of who's chasing them, who Georgia State's battling up against. It's not other Sunbelt programs, guys. Like, it's just not. And he's going to want to win those battles. And the thing that from what I'm talking to kids about on their visit and the feedback that I get is he's not selling massive NIL. That there may be a day, that's certainly not today, as the NIL is, I think, 8-10 months old, basically built last September. He's selling, listen, you can come to Atlanta, have an opportunity to ball out. If football doesn't work out for you, the city of Atlanta has an abundance of opportunity. You're going to be connected to people all over the place, and work and live where he wants to live. I mean, he's here, his son's here. That's another thing. Watch out for Austin McGee. He profiles a lot like Penny Hart did coming out of high school. That kid can absolutely fly. He's the 100 and 200 meter champ coming out of Athens Academy. He's a little light right now, but yeah, you could see him on special teams, punt return, kick return, because the one thing you cannot teach is just absolutely hauling butt speed, and that kid can fly. And he's the coach's kid. That matters.
Yeah, you kind of touched on a couple different things I was going to talk about, but one of them hit really quickly. You made a comment about not really competing with Sunbelt guys or the teams, the players that other Sunbelt coaches are going for. And I think it was today, there's a 4-star cornerback, I believe, who announced his top 7. And not only is Georgia State, the only Sunbelt team, it's the only G5 team that he's actually looking at. He has all P5 offers it's 6 P5 teams, and Georgia State is who he's considering right now. How does Dell McGee approach? Sean Elliott was on record multiple times saying that he's not going to sell Georgia State. He's going to he wants kids that want to come here, which blew all of our minds every time he said it. How is Coach McGee selling Georgia State? What's he saying? You talked about it a little bit with Atlanta, but what's the sales pitch?
He's just relentless. I mean, that's the biggest thing. The best way that I can say it. He doesn't stop. If guys are committed until they're signed, basically he's staying after them. I know he's talked to some kids that have committed in the last 2 or 3 weeks to other programs, staying kind of on the target list there. And some guys, again, he's just not afraid of not chasing down kids that basically have Power 4 offers or committed to Power 4. Again, I've mentioned his name before, Bo Walker. He was the primary running back, basically commit to the University of Georgia, committed to Dell. He's transferred from Cedar Grove to Stockbridge. I believe recently got eligible from what I understand, with GHSA and everything like that. I fully expect that kid to take an official visit. to Georgia State because of Dell, and that's the relationship that he has built, and really the trust as well. I mean, you look at his running back rooms at Georgia, and the guys that he recruited. It's just different. It's a different level of evaluation. I think that's the other side as well, is really evaluating. Hey, this is the profile of what we want. Go get it. Doesn't matter where they're from, where they, how many offers they have. He just doesn't care. And now you're gonna win some battles, you're gonna lose some battles, but he's not afraid. And what I found fascinating, and one of our competitor sites basically said, hey, Jonte Gilbert is not taking any visits, and I literally sent that reporter for that other site and said, hey, here he is right here. He's sitting right next to Dell McGee in a Lamborghini. Yeah, he's here. He's at Georgia State. He's checked in. Here's his picture. You see? Yeah. So that's incorrect. Again, may not grab Jonte Gilbert, may not grab Bo Walker, but there's a plan in place, and I think that's the other side too. Dell's an elite recruiter, has been for a long time. There's some really really good recruiters on the staff too, and I think that's guys that in recruiting circles know. Um, you know, and I think that's the interesting part about it, guy. That he's built a staff, and what's just really fascinating. And I talked to a lot of folks about it. When he expanded this coaching staff, he expanded this recruiting staff and this recruiting office from what was done previously. I mean, basically doubled it almost across the board. The big part about it, ultimately, he understands at this level, as the Power Four level as well, is you go bring in analysts, which within I think the hour basically before I jumped on with you guys, the NCAA and Division I council said, yeah, analysts can go and coach now. They can be on the field. They can be around. So that's a huge help. Now there may be other Sunbelt programs who are going to scramble and try to go hire analysts here in June, which can be difficult. He already has them in place. And if and when guys leave, assistant coaches leave for presumably better jobs, those analysts have been in those rooms. And that's literally the Nick Saban, Kirby Smart game plan. It's, I have guys that are already in my building, already have bought in and understand the philosophy we're trying to do. So if our offensive coordinator leaves, our defensive coordinator leaves, awesome. I got someone that I can plug right back in, or even if just a position coach, right? Hey, Ryan Williams, if Jim Chaney wants to retire in December, this was a 1-year favor for Dell McGee, because you know what? I'm just done. And, he's in his 60s. I'm done. Hey, Ryan Williams, who was basically poised to be an OC and quarterback coach, and guy that has, been at high level programs like Miami, and has, was a quarterback at Memphis, have him right away. And all these guys are recruiting. And that's been the really, really fascinating thing to watch, is just the relationships built quickly. The Metro Atlanta kids, oh my gosh. I mean, every single freaking day I think I talked to folks, they were like, hey, yeah, we weren't, we didn't hear from coaches at Georgia State. We weren't, we didn't think they liked our kids, didn't like our program, didn't see them. They were everywhere. Coaches were everywhere. And that was the one thing that was just so strange. And I kept asking over the, tenure of Sean Elliott, just didn't see Sean Elliott out a lot. Just didn't see him take pictures with kids. Didn't see him at high schools. Didn't hear that. And as we know, man, 2024. I mean, I've got a teenager in my own house. They take pictures of freaking everything. They just do. So it was just strange. And I kept asking, and even started asking some recruits and saying, hey, did Sean come see you? Did he make an in-home visit? And overwhelmingly, the answer was no. I mean, some of these kids may have been lying to me. Sean may have been doing it. I don't know, but it just was strange. Dell's relentless. He just doesn't take no for an answer. He basically gets after kids, and to go back to your earlier comment, Dave, it's ultimately like he's a salesman. He understands what recruiting is. I mean, recruiting is sales. Is, hey, come join our program, come build this thing. I've had Ethan Drum, the quarterback commit from Bowles down in Jacksonville, said, look, I'm coming up there to win Sunbelt championships and dominate. Like, I want to come in here. We want, like, he's recruiting for Dell now. He's recruiting for the offense, saying, hey, who else is on your target list? Who else do we need to go get? Running backs, offensive line. Offensive line's looking pretty strong right now. Who else do we need to get? Hey, Kyle Washington, highest rated prospect ever on the board. Boom, come on. Who else do you need to get? Do we need to get a tight end? Do we need to get a running back or two? It's that kind of mindset that once, because again, talented players want to play with other talented players. Period. Don't care what program level you're at. That's, I think, the ball that's continuing to roll down the hill. And now it's just about keeping those kids, and because that's the other side is these coaches trust Dell McGee's eval, man. They do. You guys are going to see it. It's happened already. It's going to continue to happen. Guys that may only had 1 or 2 or 3 offers, here comes about 7 more because Dell's got them committed. So uh, um, that's part of the reason why we put it on there too about the NIL. Honestly, that's part of the deal now. I know folks aren't exactly thrilled with it, but it's about recruiting and retention. That's the name of the game right now.
Another question I had for you was, we bemoaned for all of Coach Sean's time here was about where he was recruiting, and we talked about all the Carolina kids and all that kind of stuff, and not really putting and looking at Georgia. And Ryan didn't care; he wants the best player no matter where they come from. But you and I have talked about this separately, Ben.
Yep.
Can you talk about the relationships with Atlanta and Georgia
No doubt.
area high schools and what that was like under Sean, and what kind of challenges McGee has to face going into those schools now?
Yeah, it's again the stat and hat tip to Chris Hilliard. He went and did the research. 7 Metro Atlanta kids signed in the last 4 cycles. 7 under Sean Elliott. I've thrown around the word malpractice. I am fully biased. I'm a Metro Atlanta high school product. There is immense talent in Metro Atlanta in the state of Georgia. There's over basically 100 on average. I went back and looked. I think the six or 7 years look back. 3-star caliber players, and just to kind of peel the curtain back just a little bit on the 24/7 rating side of things. If you're a 3-star prospect, so that's an 80 and above, you are basically a group of 5 starter. So we view you as an impact player, basically at a group of 5. The higher you get up, and it's segmented, right? So you have the high 3-star, mid 3-star, your 85s, 88s, kind of moving up in there, getting into, hey, I'm not only a group of 5 starter, I'm a group of 5 all conference player. Then I'm moving up to, hey, I'm a power 4 starter, or I'm a power 4 impact, player, conference player level. The higher you get up in the 80s, when you're a 90, that's you're an NFL caliber player at that point. That's the 4-star and 5-star. And again, not to go crazy about this, because I know a bunch of people, all they do is focus on the ratings, and some people say it matters and some people don't. We argue openly about 4 and 5-star guys. I've gone and seen 4 and 5-star guys. I've seen guys that think they should be 4 and 5-star guys, and I look at them and I go, no, because hey, by the way, I saw you get dominated on 7 or 8 snaps by somebody that's 30 pounds lighter than you on the offensive line. No, you're not a 4-star guy. You're rated exactly where you are. I'm able to give that feedback. And I think that's the biggest thing ultimately. I think with Dell getting in there, and he said in his press conference, he said it multiple times, everyone in the state knows Dell McGee. He was a high school coach here, Carver, Columbus. Ultimately, I think the biggest thing, high school coaches know, hey, look, we know they're going to take an honest look at our kids now. There's opportunity to get in Gwinnett now. There's opportunity to get in Cobb and Fulton and, really all over the state. And I think that's the most important thing for this program moving forward is you can be a downtown Atlanta school, and we're going to take downtown Atlanta kids. They're also going to look around. They're going to look in the state of Alabama. They're going to look in the state of Florida, where we've been successful in the past. And there's recruiting pipelines there. I don't think you're going to certainly see as many South Carolina kids. There's no knock on that state. There's been some great players that have played here. They have come from South Carolina. There's also been some kids who've never played here. They get, hey, I want to come to the big city and play. So I think there's, again, just a different philosophy. There's going to be a different mindset. And ultimately, it's just one of those deals ultimately where, Dell wants best players that fit his scheme and the impact, and he's not going to accept anything less than the best possible players he can get. It's literally that simple.
Yeah, and we talked about 4-stars come up a couple of times tonight, and we have a couple of 4-star recruits right now that are seriously looking at Georgia
Yep.
State. Are we going to get a 4-star guy on this cycle or the next?
I see it. I do, and just because Dell just doesn't give up on it, man. It's just one of those. It's one of those deals ultimately where, again, he's just not going to back down. He's not going to get scared by it. And here's what I will say too: there's guys that he's going to go after and not get. but he's going to stay on those guys if for some reason they jump in the portal in a year or two. I mean, that's we saw it with Ron Hunter. We've been saying it for years. Well, you have to manage the portal that way. You have to manage those relationships early. If it doesn't work out and they sign with the Power Forward program, good for them, man. But they may go there, they may get a bunch of NIL, but ultimately these kids want to freaking play. They want to get on the field. Every single kid in FBS football wants to make it to the NFL. You ain't gonna make the NFL sitting on the bench. Sorry, you're just not. NFL teams are not impressed by your scout team film or your junior highlights from high school. They're just not. So you got to get on the field. And again, I think the philosophy that Dell and his staff are taking is certainly the right one in this era, and it may change again. We just don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of years and couple of cycles. But I think for now, he's trying to stack as many talented players as he can. There's still so much unknown in terms of who's playing. I mentioned that a little earlier, who depth chart and things like that. But this team will be well prepared going into week 1. They're excited about the schedule. I pulled up I think I saw something on Twitter too, like the weird quirkiness of, basically the team plays, I think, one game in like 3 weeks. You got a bye week before Georgia Southern. You got a bye week after Georgia Southern. Thanks.
Don't get me
Sunbelt
started
office.
on that.
Like,
Perfect.
Please
schedule.
don't get him started.
it just, but again, like, I mean, and I got, there's no perfect schedule, right? Somebody's going to be hacked off with, what comes out of Gil and the Sunbelt office, but it's just,
I could write a
it's
perfect
funny,
schedule.
man.
I could write a perfect schedule.
But Ben, do they hate us or something? I mean, honestly, we get the weirdest schedules every year.
Every year. I mean, and I mean, this one's the strangest to me. And, ultimately the coaches aren't going to ever complain because the schedule's a schedule and whatever, everybody's got to play it. But really, 4 home games in a row and then gone for a month? Like, what is that? Like, what are we doing here?
Only team in the SBC with that. Only team.
Yes, right. So it's just like, what happens?
We have both of our bye weeks before some teams have their first. Like,
yeah,
it makes no sense.
Super fun.
But,
hey, listen.
all right, I know.
Yeah, you're good. I'll tell you one scheduling story real quick. So when Trent Miles was the head coach here, so there was I can confirm that this happened. So I know some people in that office who basically the Sun Belt sent the first draft of schedules out. So they were planning on their big March 1st release, right? Hey guys, we're going to release the schedule. I think it was like 2014. So Trent had been here 2 years, or that was the second year basically. So they basically were going to give Georgia State a week 1 game, and they were going to play 12 games in a row with no bye, and then week 13 and week 14 were going to be bye weeks. Trent literally called the Sunbelt office and was like, yeah, that's not happening. Like, it's not going to happen. We're coming off a winless season. No, we don't need to play 12 straight games again. Because, again, we know how that season turned out. We were still 1-11. We opened with Abilene Christian, beat them, and then lost the rest. But, yeah, just
the rest of them,
I don't know what goes on in that Sunbelt office. I don't know if it's like a dartboard or, I just don't know. Like, hey, maybe they just have Georgia State over here, Texas State over here, App State, JMU, and just start firing. I don't know. It's beyond bizarre. But I will say this: I think this is probably one of the more manageable schedules that Georgia State has had since going FBS. I know everyone's excitable, certainly on Twitter, with my tech comments in the last few days, and I don't care. I'm here for all the smoke. You guys know that. It's one of these things. Ultimately, Georgia Tech has a 7-hour flight to Dublin and a 7-hour flight back. No matter what happens against Florida State, that is going to be taxing. And it's also, I trust this staff with its, with its ability there. Shoot, I'll be honest. You beat Georgia Tech, Chattanooga may be the most dangerous game on the schedule at that point. I mean, really.
It's just like after the Tennessee game, right?
Right. I mean, exactly. And here's the deal. That game is personal. Rusty Wright, the head coach of Chattanooga, coached here. He wanted this job. He was linked to this job. He wanted to interview and be interviewed for it, and he was not in the mix. So, it's going to be a blast, man. It's going to be here sooner than we know. And, countdown is, approaching 60 days, which is, kind of the time everybody starts locking in.
So since you brought it up, Ben, and I know you have strong feelings on this, how big of a game for Georgia State is that week 1 game at Bobby Dodd against Georgia Tech?
Seismic game for not only the program itself, but I think for the city of Atlanta, what Dell wants to do in terms of recruiting for the state of Georgia. There's so many storylines on both rosters. I mean, Trent McKnight and Corey Peoples are on that staff, on Brent Key's staff over there. On this side, you got Kevin Shearer, you got Carter Blunt. From the players' point of view, Kenyatta Watson, Zach Gibson. You basically could have two starters. You got Thomas Gore, who was one of the best players in the country for Georgia State in the interior line. He transferred into Tech from Miami. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of stories. Then you've got obviously the relationships we could, tie back to the early 1900s, right? Tech and Georgia State have basically had kind of a cousin or little brother relationship. There's famous stories, and Bill Curry talked about it. Bobby Dodd and some of those players back in those days were sending kids to, basically Georgia State, essentially one called Georgia State University back there, but, sending some of their football players to Georgia State to take classes. And, we know how the proximity, they're the closest two FBS schools. This game matters, man. It's a humongous thing. I will say, any of your listeners, and I've said it on our boards, and I will continue to say it until the game kicks off, 8 o'clock on August 31st. If you have any affinity or any connection to Georgia State, this is the game to go to, because I think a lot of eyeballs are going to be paying attention. I can tell you there's going to be a whole lot of Georgia fans who are rooting for Dell McGee. We certainly have that going to us. They certainly will not be rooting for Georgia Tech. Um, there's a lot going on, man. And week one, 8 o'clock, it's going to be awesome. And any of our fans that say that game kicks off at too late, man, take a
Shut
Red
up.
Bull,
No, just shut
Monster,
up.
freaking. I'll buy you coffee, whatever you need, man. Like, just let's go. Like, my wife and I literally are talking about trying to bring 8 to 10 people with us. Like, it's just that game matters, man. Like, it's so seismic for this program, year 15. To play it in state, P4, like it just is. I mean, I've told people the story before. I was in the building when Florida State lost to the University of South Florida. And South Florida was, I think, 14 or 15 years old, about this same time. Ugly game, 17-7. But you had a Tallahassee native beat Florida State there. It launched South Florida, like in a major way, where, they got up to the point at one point, basically, where they were number 2 in the then BCS. That's a humongous potential statement game. And you'll have a whole lot of kids, a whole lot of recruits paying attention. And again, you have Brent Key over there trying to catch his footing, and it's not like they're playing an FCS opponent over there in Dublin either. I mean, Florida State's loaded again, so it's going to be very, very interesting. And I certainly love the game where it sits for Georgia State. Again, a manageable SEC opponent coming in there with Vanderbilt week 3. I mean, they just don't scare me. No offense to the Vanderbilt folks, but that's the worst SEC team. It just is. I mean, yeah, they're still an SEC team. They get to put that logo and, badge and stuff on them. But this isn't Bama or Ole Miss or even North Carolina with a potential top 5 pick coming in. So,
Yep.
it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I think the implications of this game, and I've already talked to some folks too. Look, yeah, Georgia State's an underdog significantly in this game,
Well,
but
duh,
this isn't
right?
this isn't Tennessee. This
Right.
isn't. It's really not. From talking to folks that look at these lines, I think the latest line is like 19 and a half. It opened at 21. I can see it settling 16, 17 in that neighborhood, probably about right. But again, a lot of funky things can happen, man. Dell will have the guys ready. That I do know.
Well, let's hope your Seminoles rough them up a little bit over there in Dublin, and it goes to overtime all the way to the very end. Like,
I'm here for it, man. Listen, they're playing on a soccer field too. That's
Yep.
a little bit different. Not playing on a field turf like Clemson or UGA will be over there, Mercedes Benz or in our building. So it's a little bit different deal, and it's not a small thing as well to have a full weeks of game tape either for the staff to basically show and have the players be able to see some tendencies and seeing what they're doing. And there's a lot of Buster Faulkner, the Georgia Tech OC, he was on the UGA staff. Dell knows him personally. He was sitting in the room with him basically in offense, previous years, and he wanted this job, right? He interviewed for this job. You had Jess Simpson, who's also an assistant over there at Tech. He wanted this job. There's a lot of stuff going on in that first game that a lot of folks don't pay attention to, and Tech fans are feeling good about themselves, right? They went to a bowl last year. They're not the worst coached team in the nation anymore. So that's pretty fun.
Pretty solid QB too, right? I mean, he's returning, so
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's good, but you're gonna have to tell me about this defense because they had one of the worst last year. So
They
we'll
did.
see. We'll see what happens.
All right.
All right, Ben, I know you got to get out of here, so I'll just I got one more question for you. We talked a lot about football, but what do you get about basketball? Give us whatever basketball news there is out there right now.
What's our team now? Who are we?
Starting to see some of the schedule leaks. You'll see more of that probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Waiting on the Rocco Miller DM. He's one of the best schedule guys. He's sends freedom of information requests out a ton. I need to check in with him, so that's a good reminder as well. I think having all 13 scholarships has been good. I've heard summer workouts are going pretty well. Need to catch up with Coach Hayes and see how things are going down there. He feels good about his roster. Feels good about the schedule. I was a little disappointed. Obviously, Auburn wasn't coming up, so that game's scheduled down there. But you still got Kennesaw coming here. You got Mercer coming here. Sun Belt schedule. The whole league, it's turned over a bunch. I've seen Arkansas State getting a lot of love as a potential preseason favorite. Louisiana. Whatever. Bobby Marlin's still there, and he has the Cajun tattoo or whatever. Good for him. James Madison completely gutted. Completely new coaching staff. So it's going to be fascinating. And this is again, Jonas understands the importance of year 3. He understands. And he added a bunch of talent, really added a bunch of size. I think that's the impressive thing to me. He added some really, again, going and get Jelani Hamilton. He's a 6'5" guard who can play both guard positions, both point guard and shooting guard. It really, you don't see that a ton in the Sun Belt. Adding multiple 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", DK coming back off of freshman year. Cesar Edwards, guy that he's extremely familiar with, that played at Xavier a couple years ago with him, helped him, was a key role guy there, 6'9", 230. I think, definitely has addressed the needs. And now, you just want to see some of these guys step forward, and I think he's going to have depth. I think he's going to have guys that can shoot the ball, guys that can defend, especially on the interior. I think that was a big issue. They're really the last month of the season, really not having but, 1 or 2 big guys in the middle. Now you got probably 4 guys that you can rotate. So he feels good about his rotation, feels good about his roster. It's just now it's obviously June. So you're hoping guys can continue to progress, get stronger, stay injury free. That was a big thing as well. The last couple of years we've seen some of the injury luck that has happened. So just keeping everybody healthy. But yeah, so far so good. I mean, reports have been pretty good. Teams look good, and working through getting to know each other and developing that chemistry. So should be a fun season at the Convocation Center. It'll be here quickly too. Holy smokes! You look up and man, you're just. It's all of a sudden, right? We get through football first month, and you're like, oh, there's basketball. There you are. There's now we're going.
Awesome, man. Ben, thanks a lot for being here with us tonight. I know you have so much other stuff going on. You got to get out of here, but we really appreciate all the information. It's good to catch up with you, and let's do it again, maybe right before the season gets started, and get your those Ben Moore predictions.
Let's do it, boys. Missed y'all. Thanks for having me. We'll see you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Right.
Thanks a lot. Whew.
I catch my breath.
Ben is the definition of why radio call-ins would say, thanks, you guys. I'll hang up and I'll listen because I know it's just going to go on.
I got some work done. I got some things done while we were going.
I got to reboot my
I was
laptop that was shitting the bed, so that's pretty good.
Yeah. For those listening, you don't even know.
Tim logged out, logged back in.
I didn't know
Ryan,
Patreon had an app.
I was actually watching Ryan and making sure he wasn't going to pass out on this there. Those eyes got a little heavy on him. So, yes.
Well, you guys start talking about scheduling. So,
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, we got dangerously close to diving well into it. I could see you chewing on your nails. You're like, please don't.
I know.
Yeah, well, if Ben had not already said that he needed to get out of here a little early, I would.
We'd be here for another hour talking about scheduling with the both of you.
Absolutely.
All 3 of you, really. Ben loves that shit too.
I wanted to say, Ben, so you're basically saying the Sun Belt sucks without saying it sucks, because He danced around the whole entire thing. You wouldn't say it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, the Sun Belt does suck.
Well, we don't
It
have a
sucks
problem saying it.
It sucks being in this conference. Ben thinks it sucks being in this conference, and I'm pretty sure there is a new head coach of college football at the Park that also thinks the conference sucks. So,
excuse me, a new AD.
a new AD. Yeah, oh man, those words just give me tingles. All right, we try to keep this 40, 45 minutes or whatever, and Ben definitely took us well past that. So we're going to go ahead and do last call, where we'll talk about the couple of other topics we had in that, a little bit of a different type of a last call, more of a kind of a part 2 to this week's episode. I'm going to let Tim take us out of here, but I do want to reiterate that last call is on our Patreon page, but it is free of charge. It just comes out on Friday for those that don't pay for it. It is also on our YouTube channel that comes out on Fridays as well. So, Tim, with that, I'll let you take us out.
Yeah, sure. Thanks everyone for listening. We're gonna take a break, probably catch our breath. We've been talking a lot tonight. We restock our beverages, and then probably use the restroom. If you liked hearing from Ben, a great friend of the show, consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/State of Atlanta. You'll get live stream access coming up next. It's basically our real show coming up next. Discounts on our sweet merch. It's great. Look at David. He's got awesome merch on right now. That is great. I love that. Our group chat, which is lively and has late breaking news and adult beverages at tailgates. I think it's $5 a month to be a fan of the show. We'd love to have you aboard. Say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
Peace.